thank you everyone for joining tonight. My name is Rachel Gorchov, and I'm a member of Tiger Strikes Asteroid Gallery. I co-curated this exhibition with Joe Yarrington. Before we get started with tonight's event, we'd like to acknowledge that Tiger Strikes Asteroid stands in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter protests happening around the country, and stands unequivocally against the systematic racism, white supremacy, and police brutality that has disproportionately targeted the Black community. And we'd like to share some organizations we support donating time and money to. So that's what's on my screen right now. And of course, these organizations include but are not limited to these organizations, but we do feel this is a good place to start. So I'll leave this on my screen for a few moments. Feel free to take a screenshot. So I invited Joe Yarrington, a colleague from Fairfield University, to co-curate this exhibition with me a year ago on the intersection between water and health, following a university-wide initiative she led on integrating this theme into her school's curriculum. The water's role in life continues to remain constant, although the world around us has changed dramatically since we first conceived of this exhibition. And the artists in this show are Atul Bala, Gail Biederman, Jody Lin-Key Chow, Mary Dwyer, Timothy Fadick, Julia Krolik and Owen Fernley, Phoebe Muir, Bridget Francis Quinn, Carolyn Schwab, Motohide Takami, and Cheryl Yoon. Tonight's talk will follow a round robin format in which we'll ask one artist a question who will answer and then in turn ask another question. We'll continue around the group in this way. Each artist will have 5 minutes to answer, and at the end, we'll open up the floor to questions. 4 artists are joining us tonight. We have tonight Phoebe Muir, Carolyn Schwab, Mary Dwyer, and we hope Atul Bala, who is joining us from India and is running into some technical difficulties getting on. So he may or may not be able to join us tonight. We're hoping that he'll be able to sign in. The second part of this round robin artist talk is happening 1 week from today, next Wednesday, June 24th, same time, 8 p.m. If you have the link to this one, you probably have the link to that one. It's available on Tiger Strikes Asteroid's website. We hope you can join us for part 2 of this event. Both sessions will also be recorded and posted to our website, so you can watch this one again and the next one on the website as well. So with that, I'll pass the floor to Joe.
Thank you, Rachel, for the introduction and talking about the structure of what we're doing tonight. I'm going to kind of rephrase some of what was in the press release and just to set up the context for the exhibition and to refresh or to explain what the exhibition is about. Both inside and outside of us, water comprises 60% of the human body and 70% of the Earth's surface. Access to clean water is an essential human right. Beyond basic survival, we use it in a myriad of ways throughout our daily lives. It is the basis of many cultural and spiritual practices. Our use of water defines geography and borders, as well as influencing trade and economics. In chemistry, catenation is the bonding of atoms of the same element. The exhibition uses the title Catenations as a way to frame a collection of artworks that together invite the viewer to consider the role of water in their own health, happiness, and the politics surrounding water. And tonight we'll be talking to, we're going to show Atul's work. I'm hoping we'll see him a little later, but we'll switch to the first slide. Atul Bala is a performance artist based in India. He has included a piece in the show in which he asks a body of water 5 questions, drawn from an episode in the Indian epic Mahabharata. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. The next slide is Carolyn Schwab's work. She's a German artist who makes site-specific installations and sculpture, and has contributed 3 shallow reflecting pools to this exhibition. Phoebe Muir, a painter from Philadelphia, has focused 10+ years painting swimming pools and water parks. We have included her painting Raging Waters, Wildwood, New Jersey, in the exhibition.
And next we have Mary Dwyer, who lives in Connecticut. She's a healthcare worker and artist, making intimate paintings commemorating important yet anonymous figures from history. Her piece in the exhibition honors sanitation workers. And not joining us today or in the next session, however, we're thrilled to have their work in the exhibition, are Gail Biederman. This is a mock-up of her piece that will be in the show. Gail is an installation artist from upstate New York. Her work, represented here with an earlier piece, originally shown at Wave Hill, will be site-specific, bringing viewers' attention to the water pipes that run the length of the gallery. And here she's shown us a mock-up with the water pipes in the gallery at Tiger Strikes Asteroid. And finally, we have Timothy Fadek, a photojournalist based in Berlin and New York. In 2014, he completed a project on horseshoe crab's blood's use in the pharmaceutical industry. A photo from this series is included in the exhibition. And as I mentioned, next week we'll be speaking with the rest of the artists in the show. And that includes Jody Lin Chow, Julia Krolik and Owen Fernley, Bridget Francis Quinn, Motohide Takami, and Cheryl Yoon. So with that, we'd like to begin the round robin portion of this event.
We do have we were discussing if this happened. So Rachel, I have the question that Atul had for Carolyn.
Okay.
I didn't know if we wanted to, talk about what our question was to Atul and then go right into the question that Atul was going to ask Carolyn. Do you have a suggestion? We're brainstorming a little bit now for all of you who are tuning in here, but.
Well, maybe we can ask Atul's question for Carolyn, and if he's able to join later, then we'll be able to ask him his question. And if not, we can still share the question we had for him.
Would you like, I have it up on my email. Do you want me to read the question, or do you have it?
That would be great. I actually don't have it up on my screen just yet.
Atul has said, "Dear Carolyn," he wrote, I'm just putting it in a letter form now. Would have been great to see your work in the flesh, but I guess not in these times. It would have also been great to engage with the material. So this is the question I have for you, Carolyn. You use a lot with curricular elements in your work, and if I may say, physically, symbolically, and conceptually. Could we then bring in the notion of circular time that may be addressed within your work? And through it, would this particular work that you exhibit also address the notion of cyclical water? As the fresh water on Earth remains the same, and so does the water in our bodies. This actually echoes my work, and you, which he puts in quotes, "You always step into the same river." Also, this work of yours is Black. Would you connect the reflective, non-reflective nature of the work and it being kept on the floor to somewhere address a notion of ourselves, and especially in these times of upheaval being witnessed in the US? So, Carolyn, I know it's 3 a.m. in the morning for you from Berlin.
I feel like it was like a lot of questions in there, but actually A lot of good questions too. So what I recall is like referring to the circular shape, and it's I mean that's a question I constantly ask myself because I make circles all the time, but it's really never like I go into the studio and it's like, oh, I'm just going to make another circle. It's more or less that at the end of a long winded process, there's still there's a circle again in the final piece. What I thought was interesting was what he said about time, because I never looked at. I mean, you could totally say that, you know, the circle like references a clock or something. I usually look at them more as like lenses, or like, yeah, or like objects, or like camera lenses that you look through to kind of look somewhere out to have a, yeah, to have a closer look or a different perspective on something. But the time the time aspect definitely plays a particular role in this one, because the water surface in within the pool kind of evaporates over time, and is kind of a reflection on how you know, water just never stands still in whatever form, whether it's frozen or a liquid or a steam. It's just constantly moving. Like there is no way of freezing it, time freezing it in a way. So you could, in a way, it is sort of like an abstracted water a clock. I don't know. It's just it's maybe it's a clock just in a very different way. You know, it has the shape and it has this kind of time element to it. And then what was the second
The
part?
second was, he said, which I think, you know, just I'll do the, you know, he's not here, so I'm going to be his voice a little bit, but you know, I love the idea of the evaporation too, that, you know, you can see time by, maybe it's very slow, but you can see time by the evaporation of the water and the refilling. We discussed this in the gallery, the refilling perhaps of these over the course of the exhibition. But his second question, he said, and through it, I guess the notion of circular time, and through it, would this particular work that you exhibit also address the notion of cyclical water, as the fresh water on Earth remains the same, and so does the water in our bodies?
Mm, 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 um, I think there was also something in the question about like referring to our like the current events and all of that. And
Yes, well, I can read that if you want to, and maybe just putting those two together or something. But this, and this work of yours is Black. Would you connect the reflective, non-reflective nature of the work and it being kept on the floor to somewhere address the notion of ourselves, and especially in these times of upheaval being witnessed in the US? And that was something that I think Rachel and I were discussing, you know, about work, our perceptions of our own work, and also the audience perceptions of our work changing as the world changes. You know, we might have this intent, but it will be read from a lot of different lenses, you know, based on where we're coming from, I think, at this particular time. So I don't know if you want to speak to that or thought about, you know, the shift.
Yeah, just when you read out the questions, I actually had a lot of like thoughts coming to my mind. It's what is interesting is that the work is positioned on the floor. So when you kind of like look into the circle, it's like almost like bending over a pond or something like that. And in a lot of movies, there's like these like also a lot of Disney movies, you have like this moment where the main character looks into some kind of magical pond or water and sees a reflection of themselves, sometimes even changing. And it's kind, I mean, that's never been like intentional in the progress of making this work. But it's kind of funny now in that we live in these very transformative times that there is this, you know, this is kind of in the work there as well, that you bend over it, and it's kind of this moment of like you look at yourself, maybe also you look at yourself in a black reflection. You know, that's never been, like I said, it's never been part of it. But obviously this work is now part of this world, and this is the world right now. So it cannot, you cannot say it's not valid to read it that way, right? Just because the context has just shifted, right? So you know, that is just, I guess, in a way, I feel like that's a lucky accident in a way, because it extends the work in that direction. You know, it literally keeps moving, but also, you know, I would always hope that the artwork is never finished, even if it leaves my studio. Now it's out there in this exhibition, and you know, it just without me doing anything to it, this new dimension is added, which I don't know, I just really like, I guess.
And also we become your caretaker. We become the, you know, not your caretakers, well,
Yeah.
maybe, but the caretakers of the work as well, you know, and, you know, by presenting it, it's interesting that work does, it never stops. It's a living thing, you know, so I think it continues to evolve and deepen and inform us, even though the person who has made it or the person who's created it, it keeps informing us about what it could be. We're hitting 5 minutes, but because Atul's not here, maybe we can go another minute or two just to expand a little bit. So, you know, I think for me, I think it's important work in that reflective, the aspect of time, as Atul brings up, and cyclical time, and also the reflective time. I think we're all in a very reflective time right now. So it's that bending over, you know, in a supplication perhaps, you know, there's 3 of these. So there's a kind of, you know, the numerical aspect of those 3 also has connotations as well. Whether we bring that to this or whether it was intentional for you, you know, it's a shared viewer artist situation, you know, where we're bringing something, and the conversations as well. Atul asking you about circular time. I always love the discussion. One of the reasons we set this up is like, it gets you thinking, oh yeah, that's an interesting aspect to my work. And yes, it's there. And maybe it wasn't up on that top consciousness level, but now it might be something I'm considering, that I see it now in certain aspects of my work. So thank you very much. Do you have a question for the next artist? Who is next?
Phoebe, I believe.
Phoebe, yes. So we can put Phoebe's work up.
So what I was really like, first of all, I thought it was really interesting that you keep like making these paintings over such a long period of time, 10 years, I believe it is. So I guess, first of all, I'm just really curious, like, I know a little bit that of the background from the statement, but still I would like to ask again, also for the audience, just where this fascination for that topic came from, but then also specifically about this painting. Obviously you have this water theme park, or this artificial water park in the front, and then there's the sea and the backdrop. So I was wondering about this, well, the story or the intention, or whether there was an intention about, you know, putting these 2 different bodies of water in the painting so close together. So yeah, maybe that starts the conversation.
Things, I mean, scenery where there's a pool in front of a big body of water. Because I'm really fascinated with bodies of water, and I think I did the ocean on the back to show like how much smaller the other body of water is, and to do like an allegory of, to do like a vision of things, do a background, having a body of water in the background. And I like doing the artificial water parks because they're surreal, and I felt like, you know, there's a huge surreality in like this complex water park in front of the ocean. I mean, usually I see it indoors or I see it in an amusement park. And did you ask something about me painting for like 10 years? What got me into it, or?
No, I think I read in the statement that you've been painting these water parks, like it's not just this one painting, but there's like a series of them, and they kind of like, you've made them over like quite a long time span. So just, I don't know, that's kind of fascinating to me. And maybe you can say, I don't know, do they change over time, or like, what is it that keeps you making them? Like what is it that leads one painting to the next painting to the next painting, I guess?
Well, I started out doing swimming pools. My parents never did. We didn't really go to many fancy pools, except as a child. A lot of the swimming pools had diving boards, and but I only went on one water slide when I was like before I was 12,
Oh,
and I was like impressed. And when I went to my first water park, I was impressed with all the water slides and the surrealism of the water slides and the way they move around, and just all the shapes and everything. I liked seeing all the squiggliness and the shapes and the bright colors of the water slides. We never went to Wildwood when we were kids, and I've always wanted to go to Wildwood and go to different water parks. So I'm basically, the whole thing with the images that I do with water parks is basically to reflect what I missed in my childhood. But I started out doing swimming pools because mostly swimming pools from when I was younger, like my childhood memories. Like we used to go to the Y, and we went to the Y, and there was this one Y that had like 7 pools. So I did a series with every single swimming pool from that Y. And so and then I also went traveling, and I went to a lot of fancy pools, and I was impressed with them, like the water slides, the fountains, all the sensory things, because I'm a very sensory oriented artist. And I've never seen anything like this, like trees in a pools. So that's where I came up with so I started making pool complexes, and then I went to do water parks like Dorney Park and stuff like that. But this is from my trip to Wildwood. And I really loved like the water slide where people were going off the water slide, jumping, and you get shot like 10 feet from the water slide. That was a lot of fun. It's like a high dive and a water slide combined. And then the rope swing, I thought that was impressive because I always had fantasies about the rope swing, about doing a rope swing into the water. My brother told me about doing that when he was a kid.
It's interesting. I'm going to jump in just for a second. I know we're going to save questions for the end, but taking a look at your ongoing series, this particular painting is quite large, and I love the fact that it becomes a kind of arena. It's a kind of both fantasy and a controlled narrative about perhaps your childhood, where it's like, this was something perhaps I was denied, perhaps I thought, what a magical world, why can't I enter it? But in this particular painting, I think for me, it shifts in this time, and the way we've all shifted, I suppose, in the last 2 or 3 months, I begin to see the sparseness of the people that are there, this kind of sense of it being a physical structure with not so many participants. And I'm thinking, as we're re-emerging into this world after the virus, slowly.
The reason why I didn't put very many people in there is because when I was really into making painting swimming pools and all, I have tried to go to pools and take pictures and found that it was against the law. Like I went to Denmark and took a picture of a very fancy, beautiful pool, but they wouldn't let me because it was illegal. And I thought that it was illegal to do it anywhere in America. And I also felt like, I didn't put very many people in there because I know how like people are self-conscious with how they look in their bathing suits. And then there was all this stuff about people don't want you to take pictures at swimming pools because they're afraid that pedophiles will see it. Or they would think I'm a pedophile for taking pictures of places where there's lots of children in bathing suits, when in fact, I'm more interested in like the movement, you know, jumping into the water and the flips and the coolness that the children do, like all the cool moves that they do, and going on water slides on their feet first or head first.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating that, you know, your perception, what you think you're doing, and what someone else is perceiving, you know, how that can be so different, you know, and to, you know, if you have a camera at a swimming pool, what are you doing there? You know, it's more suspicion than, you know, we live in a not very innocent age right now, you know, so there's suspicion there instead of, I just am fascinated by the structure and the movement and, you know, the surreal aspect of this. But looks like we're sort of at the end of the 5 minutes. So thank you. I'm doing a little timer here. You can probably hear it a little bit. But Phoebe, can you ask the question that you had for Mary Dwyer, who I believe is following you?
I just long it because I couldn't see. I mean, from the statement you mentioned sanitation, that your statements about sanitation workers. How
Yep.
does that relate to the water theme? I would like to know more about that.
Oh, okay.
Rachel, can you change the slide? There we go. Thanks.
Oh, Phoebe, by the way, I really like your painting.
Thanks.
It's touching that you, well, maybe we should talk about things later. Sorry, I'll talk about my, well, I'm interested in human stories, and I wanted to come up with a human story, a connection with water. I tried to do something personal, which I think at the end I found out it was personal about my own life, but I found the story about, there's World Toilet Day, which is November 19th.
That's what I wanted to know about World Toilet Day. And
yeah, so it's a movement to make people aware that there's people in the world that don't have safe places to go, and a lot of it has to do with the lack of water, clean water, any water, and water afterwards to wash our hands with. And so in that, while I was doing some research, there were some narratives from sanitation workers, and they were talking about how they actually go into latrines and clean fecal matter out of the latrines, and how dangerous it is. And they use like the tools that they are given really don't work right. So they figured out a better way. They use their hands. They actually use their hands to scoop, and sometimes they take their shoes off because they slide in the pits sometimes, and they said it's really dangerous. And they figure out ways, like the best time of day to work. So later in the day when it's hot, it's really dangerous in there.
It's commendable that people are willing to do this, not, you know, that they are able to handle it.
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking too. I was like, it's amazing. And they thought, you know, our job is really important, and they're actually making everybody else in their community more comfortable by doing this job, because the latrines, I guess they get filled up and they need to be cleaned out so it could continue to be used. So their work is really important. So I just, basically this painting's about, I guess, about two things. It's about them going to work. And I realized that later, that it's really about a painting about people going to work and how we prepare ourselves for work, and like mentally. I see these guys, they're going to work, and there's a younger guy, and he's still curious about the world, and he's looking around, and maybe people are checking him out, and he's noticing other things. And then the older guy is, he's more seasoned. He's probably somebody that he's apprenticing with, and he's just thinking about work. He's like, he's assessing his day. He's planning what he's going to do. And I was thinking, yeah, that's pretty much what everybody probably does every morning. So yeah. I just really realized it was about work, and that's actually what I do too. You know, I know when I'm walking to work, I get out of my car, I'm walking to work. I work in a hospital. I'm thinking about, all right, what I'm going to do. And I heard so many people during COVID, you probably heard them all on television and commercials and stuff. I don't do clinical work, but I still do work in a hospital where nurses and doctors and MST people, they were like mentally getting themselves ready for work. And I thought, geez, these guys probably do the same thing, because it's dangerous. They, you know, you got to be quick and think about your safety.
I imagine it makes their anxiety high and makes them really frustrated with the way COVID's being handled.
Right. Yes, I know. After I did this painting after excuse me, before it broke. I think I finished it in February, but it did kind of change after the virus. You know, and I was just thinking of all the people I work with and all the people around the world that you know, that do dangerous things, and now they're being like more revered. It's like, oh, okay, these people actually, excuse me, they're actually essential workers. You know, the people that are driving the buses and cleaning the bathrooms and stuff. I know in the hospital where you work, people who clean they're really important because, you know, they kill infection. It's a really dangerous job and it's a really important job. So I think I was just thinking about how, you know, we're all important, and everything we do, it's like a big circle of you do this job, I do that job. You all need each other to do.
Oh yeah, it's like janitors, you know, they might get paid very little, but then they clean up, what's it, Columbia University or Harvard or whatever, so that people can work in Wall Street, you know.
I like that. Exactly. And it's like the whole pay inequality, it's really maddening. It's ridiculous.
I know, it makes me mad too, especially with immigrants.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, yeah, so my painting, we were talking about how it might have changed. It changes, your work changes as time goes by. This really became something about work and workers more than just like these two guys, although this painting is about these two guys and like their own moment. You know, I actually was thinking they were in a crowded city walking to work, but I like to isolate my characters and it's just about them. So.
Well, I have a friend on the spectrum who's
Hi, Susan Shutan.
And he's like really furious with what's going on with the way the United States is handling COVID and the quarantines. I mean, because all it is putting people like him at work. But thank you for your service.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I think that's been. Hopefully, it's going to change after. If we ever get back to normal again, hopefully people remember everybody who's doing jobs that aren't so glamorous.
That would be really good, and hopefully they'll get raises.
Yes.
I mean, assuming we get out of office. But if we
get fair pay for sure.
If we get another Republican, I hope they're going to be about, you know, I mean, we just need the mentality to change.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, thank you, Mary. We're I think moving on into the question and answer. Thanks for the dialogue between the two of you, and maybe we can go. There's a couple of questions, but I know probably Rachel and I have some questions, or maybe you have questions of each other as well. But maybe we can go into. It'd be nice to, Rachel, maybe to flip the screen around so that we can see all of us see each other.
Yes, and I believe Mary has prepared a question for us. Which...
Oh, yes. Oh, I forgot about that. Yes, she did. Thank you.
I tell you, it's not as intense as Atul. Is that how you say his name?
Atul.
Yeah, he had the best questions. I've seen both of your work a little bit. I've seen Joe's, a couple of pieces of Joe's. And Rachel, I looked at your work that you had up at, just recently, it might still be up, those wall pieces that you did that were really beautiful. But these are just simple questions. I was just curious if either of you use water as an integral part of your work, or if you ever think about water while you're making work. So that was one question. And the other question, if you feel like you don't like that question, I was wondering, because I love human stories, if you had a story you want to tell about water, your own personal story, because I guess that's what Phoebe was doing, if you're interested in that. And then another one, in case you didn't like those two questions. It's not a 3-part question, there's 3 separate questions. I went with that one. I was just wondering about like your experience collaborating with other artists, other curators, and also how it changed during COVID time. And it definitely did, time-wise at least. So any of those questions, if you're interested in answering, would be.
Rachel, I'm going to let you start, and I'll jump in. You know, we'll do a little back and forth, maybe time ourselves for 5 minutes too. I'll put the timer on so we don't go over, because we can answer this for a long time, but we won't do that.
Yeah, and I think we have just between the two of us 5 minutes left to leave 15 minutes then for Q&A. So I'll try to take 2 minutes or so to answer some of those questions. So I was interested in the question you had about whether I use water in my own work, and you know, not explicitly. And I think that this relates in a meaningful way to how I like to think about curating. So I think especially the last couple shows I've curated, or some shows I have in my mind, I'm thinking about exploring a theme different from one that's directly related to my work, but something that I'm interested in as a person, as a human, as a citizen of the world. And the second part of that is I really like to use curating as an opportunity to collaborate, because I'm not a collaborative artist typically. I'm a studio artist who works in a solitary fashion. So this really presents an opportunity for collaboration. So I'd been sort of working through an exhibition theme, healthcare and medicine, and I was working with Jo at Fairfield University when she had been working on this campus-wide water theme. So I approached Jo and asked if she would want to collaborate with me in sort of merging these two concepts into one show. So that's, I suppose, my answer to you about my relationship to water as a sort of creative theme. And then it's, also through that theme, it's an opportunity to meet and get to know the work of artists who, maybe I wouldn't be looking at necessarily as their work relates directly to my work. It's sort of, I like to think of it as sort of expanding the scope of what influences me, and then I think I do find in some ways that it tangentially comes back into the studio. And so I'll let Jo, I'll pass the floor over to Jo.
Jump into that, and maybe it'll be a little back and forth, but yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think, water, I reacted to water in a more sensual way, and probably maybe a healing way, perhaps like we all do, looking at the ocean, or, looking at the properties of the way light travels through water. I'm very interested in light, but it was really, even though I wasn't working on a theme that was curatorial in the art sense, I think being director of a university-wide water theme meant that I was looking at water from a lot of different lenses, from engineering, from nursing, to the business school, to the College of Arts and Sciences. And for 2 years, it was a highly immersive, we were inviting people in from all across the country to give varying, like this exhibition actually, sort of their perspective on that theme. It was the most educational thing. I felt like I was getting another master's or something. I just learned so much. I loved that kind of active learning. I love the fact of, during that time, how politicized I became because of that experience. I began to be interested in nuclear power plants, one that was not too far away from Fairfield. We went on a field trip there when you still could do that, and was really looking at the impact of the waste, the waste that came out of those plants and the impact on the sound. And that led me to a whole other exploration with uranium has an element and a theme and a focus. So I think I love to collaborate. I mean, I think if there were if I could talk about how I have been able to grow as an artist, it is through collaboration. So I'm more someone who, if we're getting in a conversation, I get excited about an idea. It's like, let's go for it, whether it's traveling or exploring an idea with another curator or working with another artist, let's say on a site piece. I think during this time, I've had wonderful conversations with a group of artists that we have bi-weekly Zooms, and you know, all sorts of collaborations have evolved from there on many, many different levels. And it's such a creative, very sad time, very emotional time, but also a highly creative one, because you are in this boundaried existence, you know, whether it's emotional or inside your house, the sheltering in place. And you really have a chance to think about your relationship to the world. How am I experiencing it now? So I think this particular exhibition, because it's been put on hold like so many around the world, it has shifted so much, including the act of washing our hands. I mean, I don't think I was a great hand washer before, but let me tell you, I know how to, like, you know, get the water on me quickly, and also do the 20 minutes or sing the song or whatever you're doing as you're washing your hands, and how much that it has to do with health around the world. So yeah, it's been very empowering. I love visiting also the curatorial process, and then maybe that little buzz was the 5 minutes are up. But I loved, you know, whether through Zoom, which we did before everything hit it with the virus, but going into so many artist studios and really, like Mary, you were saying, listening to your story, listening to your experience, listening, you know, trying to understand your language and your perspective. And we really wanted this exhibition to be exploring it in so many different directions. You know, how are you coming to this theme? And I think that was influenced by what I did at the university. And Rachel, you were part of that as well, you know, having students look through a lens. And so we're putting ourselves in that same position. You know, it's a learning thing as well, the curatorial practice is a really lovely creative thing to be doing, because it's an opportunity, it's satisfying curiosity, it's opportunity to really deeply listen and to grow from that. So, but I think we're at I hope that answers, Mary, I don't know if we answered every question, but could go on forever. We were going to open it up to, I don't know if we want to go to the chat first and then just open it up for, the hard thing about Zoom is everybody is on mute, and then it's so awkward sometimes to actually ask the question, because I love the openness of being around everyone in person, and then people can kind of go, hey, I have that question. It's a little more awkward with Zoom, but let's go to do you want to go to the chat, Rachel, and kind of see what the questions are?
Do it. And yeah, we've got, I suppose, 10 minutes left until 9, but I'd be happy to stay another few minutes so that, you know, we can stay until 5 after to give everyone in the audience a chance to ask a question. So feel free to type your question into the chat. We'll go.
My computer froze.
Well, you know, I can read the chat questions, but this is one from, and I'm sorry about your computer freezing, but hopefully you can still hear us. This is from Suzanne Chutan to Mary. Did it cross your mind to show them returning from work and how they might look? I had no idea about this day that honors them. Great, you're doing a piece about it. So I think she's, you know, sort of sharing her reaction to your work as well. I also wanted to talk about the size of your pieces. We haven't talked about that, but with such an intimate scale, you know, it felt like more like of writing, like a kind of journal or something, you know, that was a conversation between you and the painting, rather than this, I'm going to have this loud voice and talk about this. And I don't know if you want to respond to what Suzanne was saying or not, but.
Yeah, I'd like the, right, it's only 10 inches by 8 inches. So I actually have it here, but it's like this big. And I love the fact that it's small, because it is kind of I don't know, it's kind of private between those two guys that are working, but I like the fact that you have to go up close and maybe you can have your own private thought about it. I did not think about them coming back because I don't know if that would be exploiting their work. I'm not sure about that, but I think that I would like to do more paintings about this day. I think it's interesting. And Susan, I never heard about this day until I was doing research. And I think it was actually on November 19th and it was World Toilet Day. So I thought it was fascinating. I think it started in 2001 or 2003. And I think in 2030, they want to, as a goal to hopefully stop open defecation throughout the world. So there was like goals that they have too, which is pretty cool. So.
I know, and we worry about the subway. I know there's many places in the world where it's open sewage, and how many issues with health and mortality, how that affects different populations. So.
And sometimes, like, you got homeless people who just they need to go to the bathroom to survive, but they can't find a bathroom.
A huge problem. And we have an interesting question from M. Smith, and this is, I guess, just generally out to the group. So suppose any of us who want to answer can. How is water different from other types of liquid? I'm thinking about viscosity in particular. What is it about flow that is distinct about water? And I suppose I can start. I have, I guess, an off-the-cuff thought. And I suppose I just think about how, well, water on this planet, at least, is really in primary ingredient of almost all liquids. I mean, I suppose there's a few exceptions. What I'm thinking of is, say mercury or say other elements in sort of liquid form, but it's just this, sort of lifeblood. All life on this planet depends on water, and I suppose that doesn't answer your question about viscosity in particular, but I think certainly the relationship between water and life, I think is distinct about water, is the sort of a distinct quality of water. Does anyone want to weigh in on that question as well?
Maybe it's the weight relation.
Who was speaking?
Maybe it has to do with weight.
Yeah, I think that weight is one thing, but I'm also thinking with water inside us and water facilitating the flow of our blood, and this balance between water inside of us and outside of us. I always think of this sense of the connectedness of that flow, the connectedness to, when you look at water, maybe there's that sense of it's flowing through your body, it's flowing through your hands, it's, flowing down a river, it's flowing out away from you. So I think, Carolyn was talking about, I'm going to go to you for a second. You were talking about movement with water as well, in that sense of movement. Could it be oil? Why water? Because I know you do a lot of work with water, Carolyn. So I'm wondering what it is. Is it about flow for you, or is it about the viscosity of water, that, as well as everything else you've been talking about?
I was just gonna kind of say also what you were saying, that I think is I think what kind of stands out about water is that we are ourselves, we are more than 60% of our bodies are water. So when you come to say a bigger body of water like the sea or a lake or a river or whatever, we kind of have a feeling of being connected, which you could kind of explain with you could explain it in a more spiritual way maybe, but maybe it's also really just maybe it's just a magnetic relationship between two bodies of water attracting each other, coming closer to each other. It's not, maybe it's not a feeling, maybe it's physics, really. That's what I think recently a lot. And I think that is what, what stands out about water is that we are water, like to a really large extent, right? So that we can't help but um, um, we can't help but feel something when we come to a closer, when we come close to, God, sorry, it's 3 a.m. in the morning.
And Carolyn, to put you on the spot again.
Nothing like being up at 3 a.m. and discussing this in depth, but anyway.
Well, I was, also thinking about the cyclical nature of water, and Atul's question for you of water sort of as a tool for keeping time. And I was thinking of, say, geologic time as well, and this sort of, cycle of, water to, to gas to ice, and sort of this cycle of sort of moving from, say, bodies of water to the atmosphere and back again, and this sort of, slow and steady change that it affects on sort of on the landscape, and as a result on sort of
water,
all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist at all. Like, I just play around with water a lot in my studio, and I'm just fascinated with it too. But when you think about it, like you just thought about it, like it really amazes me how water, like I said before, it just never stands still. It runs through time and space and elements, like so unapologetically or so naturally. Like it probably, water doesn't care what it's doing. It's just doing it because it's doing it. There is no reason to it. But that's, I guess, the one fascinating thing with water. Like it has been there from, I don't know, day one, day zero, or whatever you want to call it. Like it's been the one life source from the beginning. And it's, in a way, it's the oldest thing. Yeah, that, the oldest beginning of life. And yet it is here right now. So it's such a loaded element, more than any other of the liquids out there. I mean, yeah. So I feel like that is probably the one thing about water, is that it has been there from the start and is still with us all the time. In the, it's been traveling through a lot.
Well, and I think the conversation between you and Atul, we set you up together because I think there's, and I'm sorry you didn't have that direct conversation with him, but even this ritualistic practice of asking, whether it's a Ganji or a body of water, to ask the water questions. And through the asking of the questions, the water gives you answers. And so this healing spiritual ritual that he talks about, he travels around the world to do that. So it's such a lovely way to think about water as a being, perhaps, has this thing, whether it's coursing, but also has this a wise entity, I suppose, because it has been there since the beginning. We're getting pretty close to the end, and I want to thank all of you for being in on this discussion and giving us a chance, because we felt very bad about the fact that the show also got canceled, but just being able to platform all of the artists, or as many as could join us, and for you to get to know them. So when the show physically gets in place, which is in September, you can come into that space and really know who made the pieces and why they made the pieces, and perhaps the connectedness between your pieces, because now you're connecting as human beings to one another. You get to ask each other questions. And because it's from people all over the world, on the most part, you're not going to be able to do that in a gallery. So in some ways, the Zoom allows a little more of that conversation to happen. And the next Zoom, which is the following week, same time, and we'll send out a link, is going to be a much bigger group. So it's going to be, I think, 5 or 6, maybe. I'm trying to see. So it's a little bit longer. Maybe we'll move through it a little faster. But I love the idea that the intimacy of this and the chance that everyone got a chance to hear you talk and ask each other questions. And now you get to know each other a little bit better. So I really appreciate it. I know, Rachel, if you want to say anything in addition to that, but
Thank you again to all the guests who joined this session, and it's really nice to have a chance to talk to each of the artists about the work, have this conversation, which I don't think we would have had a chance to do had it not been for the delay of the exhibition, which is slated to open late summer, early fall. So everyone, please stay tuned. Please keep an eye on Tiger Strikes Asteroids website. Sign up for a mailing list if you're not already, of course, because we're living in a
IG, all of those,
yeah,
all of those
social
platforms.
media. We're living in a sort of ever-changing world, so that's the plan for now. But you know, we will be in touch once we have. We'll be promoting the exhibition once we have firm information on when it's going to reopen. As Joe mentioned, when it's going to open. As Joe mentioned, the next Zoom is with the second half of artists from the exhibition is going to be next Wednesday, same time. And the link for that is already available. So it's either in an email that you've received or on Tiger Strikes Asteroids website. And so we hope you see that. We hope we see you there.